Hi, everyone, and welcome to Fluent Core English. I'm Gwen, and I'm so happy you're here. If your goal is to master English from B1 to C2 and speak with confidence in real-life conversations, then today's 2-hour masterclass is exactly for you. Over the next 2 hours, we're going to practice together, step by step. You'll learn how to transform simple B1 English into natural C2 English. Build a stronger vocabulary without memorizing endless word lists. Use advanced grammar naturally in conversations. Master phrasal verbs, idioms, collocations, and powerful everyday expressions. Improve your pronunciation and rhythm through guided shadowing. Practice speaking with real-life examples. Learn how to think in English instead of translating, and discover how advanced speakers express ideas more clearly, naturally, and confidently. This isn't a lesson where you only listen. You'll repeat after me, answer questions, upgrade simple sentences, practice real conversations, and train your brain to speak English the way fluent speakers do. By the end of this masterclass, you won't just know more English, you'll know how to use English with more confidence, better flow, and greater accuracy in everyday situations. And there's one more thing. Somewhere during today's lesson, I'll share one simple practice technique that quietly connects everything you've learned today. It's one of the biggest differences between learners who stay at the intermediate level and learners who continue growing toward advanced fluency. So stay with me, practice every exercise, and don't skip the speaking sections. Every minute of this masterclass is designed to help you move one step closer to speaking English naturally. Now, let's begin our journey from B1 to C2 English together. Many English learners believe that becoming fluent is all about learning thousands of new words, but that's only part of the story. The real difference between an intermediate speaker and a confident, advanced speaker isn't how many words they know, it's how naturally they use those words. Imagine this for a moment. A few weeks from now, someone asks you a simple question in English. This time, instead of giving a short answer, you respond with confidence. Your sentences sound smoother, your vocabulary feels richer, and for the first time, people don't just understand your English, they enjoy listening to it. That's exactly what we're going to start building today. So let's begin with one of the most important foundations of fluent English, vocabulary. Not memorizing long word lists, but learning how to turn simple English into natural, expressive English. If you're already around the B1 level, you probably know how to introduce yourself, talk about your daily routine, and share simple opinions. That's a great starting point. But today, we're going to take those simple sentences and slowly transform them into the kind of English that sounds more confident, more natural, and much more engaging. Because fluency isn't about trying to sound impressive, it's about expressing your ideas clearly and comfortably. Let me show you what I mean. A simple sentence might be, I'm tired today because I worked a lot. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that sentence. A native speaker will understand you perfectly. But listen to how a small change can make your English feel richer. I'm exhausted after such a demanding day at work. Or, I feel completely drained after handling so many challenging tasks today. Did you notice something interesting? The idea didn't change, only the way we expressed it changed. And that's one of the biggest secrets behind advanced English. You don't always need new ideas, you simply need better ways to express the ideas you already have. Over the next few minutes, you're going to practice exactly that. Little by little, your brain will start replacing simple expressions with more natural ones. And before you realize it, those richer expressions will begin coming to you automatically. Let's practice together. I'll give you a simple sentence. Your job is to think about how you could make it sound a little more natural and expressive. Don't worry if your answer isn't perfect. Just try. That's how real progress happens. Here's your first sentence. The food was good. Take a moment. How would you say it differently? Maybe the food was delicious, or the meal was absolutely delightful, or perhaps the flavors were incredible and every bite was satisfying. Excellent! Can you feel how each version creates a stronger picture in the listener's mind? That's what advanced vocabulary is really about. Not using difficult words, but choosing words that express your thoughts more clearly. Now it's your turn. Pause for a moment if you need to. Repeat each sentence out loud. Then challenge yourself to create one more version using your own words. Even if it's different from mine, that's perfectly okay, because the goal isn't to copy me, the goal is to train your own English voice. Before we move to the next example, I'd love to know something. If you're watching this lesson from the United States, which city are you watching from? Tell me in the comments below. I always enjoy seeing learners from different cities learning together, and I read as many of your comments as I can. Now let's try another sentence together. This one looks simple, but there are several natural ways to make it sound much more fluent. The sentence is, I don't like this movie. Let's take your English one step further. A few minutes ago, you saw how a simple sentence could become more expressive with just a few changes. And here's something I'd like you to notice. Advanced English isn't about making your sentences longer, it's about making them more meaningful. Imagine someone asks you what you thought about a movie. A simple answer might be, I don't like this movie. That's clear. But now listen to how an advanced speaker might express the very same idea. This movie doesn't really appeal to me. Or, I found this film rather uninteresting. You could even say, the storyline failed to capture my attention. Can you hear the difference? The opinion hasn't changed, only the way it's expressed has changed. And that's exactly what we're practicing together. Step by step, sentence by sentence, you're learning how to say ordinary things in a much more natural and confident way. If you've ever wondered why some English speakers sound so fluent, this is one of the reasons. They don't always know more, they simply know more ways to express the same idea. And by the end of today's lesson, you'll have many of those tools too. Now let's make your sentences flow more smoothly. Think of your ideas as separate pieces of a puzzle. Without something connecting them, your English can sound disconnected. That's where connectors become so important. Most learners use words like and, but, or because. Those words are useful, but as your English grows, you'll naturally begin using a wider variety of connectors. Words like although, however, nevertheless, moreover, and on the other hand. These words don't make your English sound complicated, they make your ideas flow naturally. Let me show you. Instead of saying, I wanted to go out, but it was raining, you could naturally say, although I wanted to go out, the heavy rain kept me indoors. Or, I wanted to go out, nevertheless, the weather forced me to stay inside. Notice how the conversation begins to sound smoother? That's because connectors guide your listener from one idea to the next without interruption. Now let's practice together. Repeat after me. I stayed home because I was tired. Very good. Now let's make it sound a little richer. I decided to stay home because I was feeling exhausted. Excellent. Here's another version. I stayed home because I was completely worn out after work. Can you hear how each sentence adds a little more color and personality? That's exactly what we're aiming for. And don't worry if you can't remember every expression today. You're not expected to. The goal is to train your ears and your brain to recognize more natural English. The more you hear these patterns, the more naturally you'll begin using them yourself. Now I want to talk about something that's even more important than vocabulary: confidence. Can I tell you something? Almost every fluent English speaker has made hundreds of mistakes. The difference is they didn't stop speaking because of those mistakes. Many learners stay quiet because they're afraid of saying something wrong, but staying silent never improves your English. Speaking does. Every mistake teaches your brain something new. Every correction makes your next conversation a little easier. So throughout this lesson, I want you to give yourself permission to make mistakes because every mistake means you're practicing, and every time you practice, you're getting closer to the confident English speaker you want to become. That's one of the reasons this masterclass is different. We're not chasing perfection, we're building real confidence, the kind you can actually use in everyday conversations. Now let's bring everything into a real-life situation. Imagine you've just finished a long day at work or school. A simple answer might be, "My day was busy." Perfectly correct. But now let's make it sound more natural. "My day was incredibly demanding with one task after another." Or, "Today felt overwhelming because I had back-to-back responsibilities with very little time to take a break." Or perhaps, "It was a hectic day filled with challenging tasks that kept me focused from morning until evening." Can you feel what's happening? You're no longer giving short answers. You're painting a picture with your words. And that's one of the biggest differences between speaking English and communicating English confidently. Keep practicing with me. Repeat these sentences after me slowly. As you say them, don't just repeat the words. Imagine yourself using them in a real conversation. Imagine someone asking you how your day was. Imagine yourself answering with confidence. The more your brain connects English to real situations, the more natural your speaking becomes. Now, let's focus on something that many learners overlook: rhythm. You can know thousands of English words, but if your rhythm sounds unnatural, your English won't sound fluent. Many intermediate learners speak one word at a time. They pause after almost every word. But confident speakers group words together into natural chunks. Listen carefully. I went to the store. Now say it again with a smooth rhythm. I went to the store. Excellent. Now let's make it a little longer. I went to the store to pick up some essentials before dinner. Notice how the words connect instead of sounding separate? That's exactly what creates natural English. This is why shadowing is such a powerful exercise. You don't only copy the pronunciation, you copy the rhythm, the pauses, and the natural flow of the speaker. Little by little, those patterns become part of your own English. Now, let's practice another important skill: painting a picture with your words. At an intermediate level, many learners say things like, "The weather is nice." There's nothing wrong with that. But now, let's make it more vivid. "The weather is pleasantly warm, and there's a gentle breeze that makes it perfect for a walk." Or, "The air feels fresh, the sunlight is soft, and everything outside feels calm and peaceful." Can you imagine that scene? That's the goal. You want your listener to see what you're describing, not just understand it. Now, let's practice together. Our simple sentence is, "My room is small." Let's make it sound more natural. "My room is compact but cozy, with just enough space for everything I need." Here's another version. "Although my room isn't very large, it feels warm, comfortable, and inviting because of its simple design." Excellent. Did you notice something? You aren't changing the meaning. You're simply helping your listener picture it more clearly. That's one of the biggest differences between everyday English and truly confident English. If you're still watching this lesson with me, I'd love to know. Write "I'm still watching" in the comments below. I always enjoy seeing how many dedicated learners are practicing all the way through this masterclass. Or you could even say, "It may be small, but it has a warm and welcoming atmosphere that makes me feel comfortable every time I walk in." Now it's your turn. Repeat each sentence slowly. As you speak, picture your own room. Maybe it's your bedroom, your office, or your favorite place at home. Now try creating your own version. Remember, there isn't only one correct answer. The more you connect English to your own life, the easier it becomes to remember. Now let's explore something that makes English sound much more natural. Idiomatic expressions. Don't let that phrase scare you. An idiom is simply a common expression that native speakers use every day. You don't have to learn hundreds of them at once. We'll learn them one step at a time. For example, instead of saying, "I'm very tired," you could naturally say, "I'm worn out," or "I'm completely drained." Both mean you're very tired, but they're the kinds of expressions you'll hear in real conversations. Here's another example. Instead of saying, "It's easy," a native speaker might smile and say, "It's a piece of cake." And instead of saying, "I don't understand," you could say, "I can't make sense of it." Can you hear the difference? The meaning stays almost the same, but your English begins to sound much more natural. Let's practice together. Repeat after me. After working for 8 hours, I was completely wiped out. Again, after working for 8 hours, I was completely wiped out. Excellent. Now try this one. Learning advanced grammar can feel like climbing a mountain at first, but it becomes much easier with practice. Very good. And here's one more. I was over the moon when I passed my exam. Repeat it again. I was over the moon when I passed my exam. Great job. Little by little, these expressions will start feeling natural. You won't have to memorize them forever. The more you hear them and the more you use them, the more they become part of your everyday English. Now, here's a simple habit I'd like you to try this week. Whenever you learn one useful expression, don't just write it down, use it in your own sentence. Say it out loud, then try using it again later that day. That's how vocabulary becomes active instead of staying in your notebook. Now let's look at another skill that advanced speakers use without even thinking about it: choosing the right word. Many English learners know one word for an idea, and they use that same word every time. For example, the word happy. There's nothing wrong with saying "I'm happy," but English gives us many different ways to express that feeling. You might say, "I'm pleased," "I'm delighted," "I'm thrilled," "I'm content," or "I'm ecstatic." All of these words express happiness, but each one has a slightly different feeling. For example, if you're thrilled, you're extremely excited. If you're content, you're calm and quietly satisfied. That's why choosing the right word makes your English sound much more natural. You aren't just speaking, you're expressing exactly how you feel. Let's practice these together. Listen carefully, then repeat after me. I was delighted to meet her after such a long time. Now, repeat after me. I was delighted to meet her after such a long time. Excellent. Here's another one. He felt content after finishing his project successfully. Your turn. Very good. And one more. She was ecstatic when she heard the good news. Repeat it once more. Fantastic. Now I want you to think about your own life. Imagine you just got some wonderful news, or maybe you met someone you hadn't seen in years. Which word would fit your situation best? Would you feel pleased, delighted, thrilled, or ecstatic? This is exactly how advanced English grows. You don't memorize words just to remember them. You choose the word that matches the feeling you want to express. That's what makes your English sound real. Now, let's move on to another skill that advanced English speakers use all the time, even if they don't realize it. It's called paraphrasing, and honestly, this might become one of your most valuable speaking skills. Have you ever been in the middle of a conversation and suddenly forgotten one simple English word? It happens to everyone, even advanced speakers. The difference is they don't stop talking. They simply explain the idea using different words. That's exactly what paraphrasing is. For example, imagine you forget the word restaurant. Instead of freezing, you could simply say, it's the place where people go to eat. Your listener will understand you immediately. Let's try another one. Suppose you forget the word generous. You could say, it's someone who loves helping other people and enjoys giving. Different words, same meaning, and the conversation keeps moving. That's the goal. Let's practice together. Imagine you forget the word expensive. How could you explain it? You might say, it costs a lot of money, or the price is very high. Excellent. Now let's try another one. Imagine you forget the word library. You could say, it's the place where people borrow books. Perfect. One more. Imagine you forget the word shy. You could explain it like this. It's someone who feels nervous when talking to other people. Very good. Can you see what's happening? You're teaching your brain to keep communicating instead of stopping. And that's one of the biggest secrets behind fluent conversations. Because in real life, people care much more about understanding you than hearing one perfect word. Now, let's learn another habit that makes advanced speakers sound comfortable in almost every situation: changing the way they speak depending on who they're talking to. Think about it. You probably don't speak to your best friend the same way you speak during an important interview. English works exactly the same way. For example, if you're talking with a close friend, you might smile and say, "Hey, what's up?" But imagine you're walking into a job interview. You'd probably say, "Good morning, it's nice to meet you." Both sentences are completely correct. The only difference is the situation, and learning when to use each style is another step towards speaking naturally and confidently in real life. It's a pleasure to meet you. Can you hear how different that feels from saying, "Hey, what's up?" Both are friendly, both are correct, but each one belongs in a different situation. That's why advanced English isn't just about learning more words. It's about choosing the right words for the right moment. A confident speaker naturally changes their style depending on who they're talking to. Let's practice together. Imagine you're texting a close friend. You might say, "Want to grab dinner tonight?" Simple, relaxed, natural. Now, imagine you're inviting a coworker or writing a professional email. You could say, "Would you like to join me for dinner this evening?" The meaning hasn't changed, only the situation has, and that's exactly what we're training. Here's a simple habit you can start today. Take one sentence you use often, then say it 3 different ways. First, as if you're talking to your best friend. Next, as if you're speaking to someone you just met. Finally, as if you're talking in a professional setting. This small exercise teaches your brain to become flexible, and flexibility is one of the biggest signs of advanced fluency. Now let's move to another skill that makes a huge difference: grammar. Don't worry, we're not going to memorize long grammar rules. We're going to use grammar the way people actually use it in real conversations. Many learners stay comfortable using only simple tenses, and that's perfectly normal in the beginning. But as your English grows, your grammar naturally becomes more flexible. Instead of only talking about what happened, you begin explaining how long something has been happening, what happens before another event, or how one experience changed another. Let me show you what I mean. A simple sentence is, I lived here for 5 years. That's completely correct. Now listen to a more natural version. I've been living here for the past 5 years, and during that time, I've learned so much about the local culture. Notice the difference? The second sentence doesn't just tell us a fact, it tells a story. It gives extra information, and it sounds much more natural in conversation. Let's practice together. Here's our first sentence. I studied English last year. Now let's build on it. I was studying English throughout last year, focusing on my pronunciation and speaking confidence. Excellent. Here's another one. I had been studying English for several months before I decided to join an advanced course. Very good. Now listen to one more example. I've studied English consistently since last year, and it's completely changed the way I communicate. Can you hear what's happening? The grammar becomes more flexible, but the message also becomes more interesting. That's exactly what we're aiming for. Little by little, you're learning how to express ideas with more confidence instead of simply giving short answers. Now, let's explore another grammar pattern that fluent speakers use naturally: conditionals. At first, they can seem a little challenging, but once you understand how they work, they become one of the most useful tools in everyday English. Most learners begin with simple sentences like, if it rains, I'll stay home. That's a great place to start. But as your English grows, you'll also learn how to talk about situations that never happened, things you wish had been different, or possibilities you like to imagine. For example, if I had studied harder last year, I would have passed the exam with flying colors. This kind of sentence lets you talk about the past in a much more richer and natural way. Or you could say, if I were more confident, I would speak in front of large audiences without hesitation. Can you see what these sentences allow you to do? They let you talk about possibilities, dreams, regrets, and situations that exist only in your imagination. That's why conditionals are such an important part of natural English. Let's practice them together. Repeat after me. If I had woken up earlier, I wouldn't have missed the bus. One more time. If I had woken up earlier, I wouldn't have missed the bus. Excellent. Now try this one. If I were living in London right now, I would be practicing my English with native speakers every day. Your turn. Very good. Here's one more. If I had taken that opportunity, my life would look completely different today. Repeat it again. Fantastic. At first, these sentences may feel a little unfamiliar. That's completely normal. Every fluent English speaker started exactly where you are now. The more often you hear these patterns, and the more often you say them out loud, the more natural they become. Now, let's talk about something that gives your English more personality: the words you use to express emotions. Many learners know simple words like happy, sad, or angry. Those words are useful, but English gives us many more ways to describe exactly how we feel. For example, instead of saying, I'm sad, you could say, I feel deeply discouraged, or I feel disheartened by what happened. Now, let's try another one. Instead of saying, I'm angry, you could say, I'm frustrated by the situation, or I'm outraged by how unfair that was. Notice something important. These words don't simply sound more advanced, they help you express your feelings much more accurately. And that's one of the biggest differences between knowing English and communicating naturally in English. Let's build your vocabulary together. I'll give you one simple word, then we'll explore a few stronger alternatives. Our first word is big. Instead of saying big, You could say huge, enormous, massive, gigantic, immense. Excellent. Now let's try small. You could use tiny, compact, miniature, modest. Very good. Now our next word, good. Instead of saying good, try excellent, outstanding, remarkable, impressive, exceptional. Can you feel what's happening? You're not replacing easy English with difficult English. You're giving yourself more choices, and having more choices makes speaking feel much easier. Now, let's put those new words into real sentences. Repeat after me. The building was enormous, towering over everything around it. Excellent. Here's another one. Her performance was exceptional. Every detail was carefully polished. Very good. One more. He gave a detailed description of the event, including even the smallest details. Fantastic. The more often you practice vocabulary inside complete sentences, the easier it becomes to remember. Your brain doesn't remember isolated words very well. It remembers words that are connected to real situations. Now, let's learn another habit that makes advanced English sound smooth and well organized. Connecting ideas naturally. Imagine you're telling a story. You don't want every sentence to sound separate. You want your thoughts to flow from one idea to the next. That's where discourse markers become incredibly useful. At first, many learners use simple words like first, then, and finally. Those are great, but as your English becomes stronger, you'll naturally begin using expressions like, as a matter of fact, in other words, having said that, on the contrary, by and large, or all things considered. These expressions help guide your listener through your ideas. Let's look at a simple example. Instead of saying, I like coffee, I don't like tea, you could naturally say, I enjoy coffee. On the contrary, tea has never really appealed to me. Can you hear how much smoother that sounds? You're no longer speaking in separate pieces. You're connecting your thoughts the same way confident English speakers do. Let's look at another example. She is usually quiet. Now listen to how we can connect that idea more naturally. As a matter of fact, she prefers listening more than speaking. Repeat it after me. Excellent. Here's one more. The movie was long and slow. Now let's make it sound more balanced. Having said that, the acting was absolutely outstanding. Your turn. Very good. Did you notice what these expressions do? They don't change your opinion. They simply help your ideas flow more smoothly. And that's one of the small differences that makes advanced English sound so natural. Now, let's move into a real-life situation. Imagine you're sitting in an important meeting. Someone asks for your opinion. A simple answer might be, I think this idea is good. That's perfectly correct. But now, let's make it sound more confident. In my opinion, this proposal has great potential if we implement it effectively. Or you could say, from my perspective, this idea could be very successful if we carefully consider the practical challenges. Can you hear the difference? You're no longer giving a short opinion. You're explaining your thinking. That's exactly what confident speakers do in everyday conversations. Let's practice together. Repeat after me. From my point of view, this approach is more effective than the one we used before. Excellent. Here's another one. As far as I'm concerned, strong communication skills are essential for career growth. Very good. And one more. In my view, consistent practice is the key to mastering advanced English. Repeat it once again. Fantastic. Now imagine yourself saying these sentences during a real conversation. Picture yourself speaking calmly, sharing your ideas with confidence, and knowing exactly how to explain your opinion. The more often you imagine yourself using English in real situations, the more natural it begins to feel when those moments actually happen. Now, let's build another skill that every advanced speaker uses: storytelling. Think about the last interesting conversation you had. People usually remember stories much more than facts. That's why learning to tell a story naturally is such an important part of becoming fluent. Many learners start with short sentences like this. Yesterday, I went to the park. I met my friend. We talked. Then we went home. There's nothing wrong with those sentences, but they don't help your listener experience the moment with you. Now listen to a richer version. Yesterday afternoon, I happened to meet an old friend at the park. We ended up talking for quite a while, catching up on everything that had happened since we last met. Before we realized it, the sun was beginning to set, filling the sky with beautiful shades of orange and pink. Can you picture that scene? That's the goal. You're not simply telling someone what happened, you're helping them experience the story with you. And that's what makes people enjoy listening to confident English speakers. Now let's build your storytelling skills together. We'll begin with a very simple sentence, and then we'll gradually transform it into a story that feels much more natural and engaging. Let's begin with a simple sentence. I cooked dinner last night. Now let's make it sound more natural and engaging. Last night, I prepared a homemade dinner using fresh ingredients, and the wonderful aroma filled the kitchen as everything slowly came together. Very good. Now listen to another version. Yesterday evening, I decided to make a warm, comforting meal, and after such a busy day, simply chopping vegetables and stirring the pot felt surprisingly relaxing. Can you hear the difference? The event is exactly the same, but now your listener can almost picture what's happening. That's the power of storytelling. Advanced English isn't about using difficult words all the time. It's about helping people see, hear, and feel what you're describing. Now let's build another skill that makes conversations much more interesting: expressing your opinions with depth. Many learners simply say, I like this book. That's a good beginning, but confident speakers usually explain why they feel that way. For example, I really enjoyed this book because the author described the emotions so realistically that every character felt believable. Or, I found this novel deeply moving because the story stayed in my mind long after I finished it. Notice what changed? You didn't just share your opinion, you explained it. And when you explain your thoughts, people naturally become more interested in what you're saying. Let's practice together. Repeat after me. I appreciated the movie not only because of its story, but also because it made me reflect on my own life. Excellent. Here's another one. I enjoyed the music mainly because of its emotional depth and the memories it brought back. Very good. One more. I admire the speech because it combined clear ideas with a powerful message that stayed with me. Fantastic. These sentences do much more than express an opinion. They explain you thinking, they show emotion, and they create a stronger connection with your listener. Now let's learn another habit that advanced speakers use every day: disagreeing politely. Think about real conversations. People don't always share the same opinion, but fluent speakers know how to disagree without sounding rude. Instead of saying, you're wrong, you could naturally say, I see your point, but I'm not completely convinced. Or, that's an interesting perspective, however, I see it a little differently. Here's another natural example. I understand where you're coming from, although I'm not sure I completely agree. Can you hear how respectful those sentences sound? You still express your opinion, but you also keep the conversation friendly. Let's practice them together. Repeat after me. I respect your opinion, but I'd like to offer a different point of view. Excellent. Now try this one. You raise a valid concern, however, I think there might be another solution. Very good. And one more. That's certainly a good idea, although I wonder if we should also consider a few other possibilities. Fantastic. This is one of the skills that makes conversations feel natural. People enjoy talking with someone who can share different ideas respectfully. Now let's move on to something you'll hear almost everywhere in everyday English: phrasal verbs and collocations. At first, they might seem difficult, but once you begin noticing them, you'll hear them in movies, podcasts, TV shows, and everyday conversations all the time. You probably already know simple phrasal verbs like wake up, sit down, or turn off. Now let's add a few that native speakers use very often. For example, bring up means to mention a topic. Come across means to find something unexpectedly. Run out of means you don't have any more of something. And carry on with means to continue doing something. These expressions appear in real conversations every single day. The more you practice them in complete sentences, the more naturally they'll become part of your own English. Now let's practice a few together. Repeat after me. Now let's put those phrasal verbs into real conversations. Repeat after me. During the meeting, she brought up an important issue that everyone else had missed. Again, during the meeting, she brought up an important issue that everyone else had missed. Very good. Here's another one. I came across an interesting article while I was browsing online. Your turn. Excellent. And one more. We ran out of milk this morning, so I had to stop by the store. Fantastic. Now imagine yourself using these expressions in your own conversations. The more often you use them in real situations, the less you'll have to think about them. Eventually, they'll become a natural part of the way you speak, and that's exactly what we're working toward throughout this masterclass. Now, let's explore another secret behind natural English: collocations. Don't worry if you've never heard that word before. A collocation is simply a pair or group of words that native speakers naturally use together. For example, we say make a decision, not do a decision. We say strong coffee, not powerful coffee. These small combinations may seem simple, but they make a huge difference in how natural your English sounds. Let's look at a few more. Take responsibility, deeply concerned, fast asleep, heavy rain, crystal clear. Native speakers use combinations like these every day without thinking about them, and little by little, you'll begin doing the same. Let's practice together. Repeat after me. He made a quick decision after hearing all the facts. Excellent. Now try this one. I was deeply concerned about her health. Very good. One more. The explanation was crystal clear, so everyone understood it immediately. Fantastic. Can you hear how smooth those expressions sound? That's because you're learning English in natural word groups instead of individual words, and that's one of the fastest ways to sound more fluent. Now, let's take your English one step further. So far, we've talked about everyday situations. Now, I'd like you to think a little bigger. Advanced speakers don't only talk about things they can see, they also talk comfortably about ideas. For example, many learners might simply say, I like learning English. That's a perfectly good sentence. But now listen to how you can express the same idea in a deeper way. For me, learning English is more than learning another language. It's a doorway to new opportunities, meaningful connections, and personal growth. Notice what happened? You didn't just describe an activity, you explained what it means to you, and that's something confident English speakers do naturally. They connect everyday experiences with bigger ideas. Instead of only talking about English, they talk about confidence. Instead of only talking about a job, they talk about opportunity. Instead of only talking about travel, they talk about freedom and new experiences. That small shift makes your English sound thoughtful, mature, and much more engaging. Now I'd like you to try the same exercise. Think about one thing that's important in your life. Maybe learning English, your family, your career, or your dreams. Then ask yourself, what does this really mean to me? You may be surprised by how many new ideas you can express once you start thinking a little more deeply. And that's exactly where advanced communication begins. Let's take your English one step further. Up to this point, we've been learning how to express ideas more clearly. Now we're going to make those ideas more meaningful. Let's start with a simple sentence. I need money. That's a perfectly natural sentence, but now listen to how an advanced speaker might express the same thought. Financial independence gives us the freedom to make our own choices and live with confidence. Can you hear the difference? The conversation is no longer only about money. It's about freedom, confidence, and independence. Let's try another one. I want friends. Now listen to a richer version. Meaningful human connections play an important role in our emotional well-being. Or you could say, I value building relationships that bring purpose, support, and happiness into my life. Notice what's happening? You're moving beyond the surface. Instead of simply saying what you want, you're explaining why it matters. That's one of the habits that naturally makes your English sound more mature and thoughtful. Now let's explore another technique that native speakers use all the time, metaphors. Don't let that word sound complicated. A metaphor is simply a creative way of expressing an idea. For example, instead of saying, he's very busy, you might hear someone say, he has a lot on his plate. Or instead of saying, she's nervous, you could say, she has butterflies in her stomach. These expressions make your English sound much more colorful and memorable. Let's practice together. Repeat after me. Learning a language is like planting a tree. It takes time, patience, and care, but one day it grows strong. Excellent. Here's another one. Her smile was like sunshine, brightening everyone around her. Very good. And one more. Life is a journey, and every challenge is simply another step along the way. Fantastic! As you continue learning English, I'd like you to try creating your own comparisons and metaphors. Think about your day, your work, your goals. Then ask yourself, what does this remind me of? That simple question will help you become a more creative and expressive speaker. Now, let's focus on another skill that makes advanced English feel much more natural, knowing how much emphasis to give your words. Sometimes you want your message to sound strong. Other times you want it to sound softer and more balanced. Many learners use the word very. Very good, very important, very difficult. There's nothing wrong with that, but English gives us many more choices. For stronger emphasis, you might say, absolutely, extremely, incredibly, remarkably, or tremendously. When you want to sound a little softer, you can use expressions like slightly, somewhat, fairly, relatively, or kind of. These small changes make a surprisingly big difference because now you're expressing exactly how strongly you feel about something. Let's practice together. Repeat after me. This is absolutely essential if you want to succeed. Again, this is absolutely essential if you want to succeed. I was utterly shocked by what I saw. Now, repeat it once more. I was utterly shocked by what I saw. Excellent. Now, let's try a softer expression. The movie was somewhat disappointing, although I still enjoyed it. Your turn. Very good. Here's another one. I felt slightly nervous before the interview, but the feeling disappeared after a few minutes. Fantastic. Can you hear the difference? Sometimes we want our words to sound strong. Other times, we want them to sound calm and balanced. Knowing how to do both is another sign of confident English. Now let's explore a speaking technique that makes conversations much more engaging. Rhetorical questions. These are questions that don't always need an answer. Instead, they invite people to think. They make your listener feel involved in the conversation. For example, isn't it fascinating how quickly technology changes our lives? Or, don't we all wish we had a little more time to do the things we love? Notice what happens? Instead of simply giving information, you're inviting your listener to think along with you. That's one of the reasons advanced speakers sound so engaging. Let's practice together. Repeat after me. Isn't it amazing how small changes in your daily routine can completely transform your life? Excellent. Here's another one. Don't you think learning English opens the door to countless new opportunities? Very good. And one more. Who wouldn't want to speak English with confidence and sound more natural? Fantastic. As you practice these kinds of questions, your English begins to sound more conversational instead of feeling like a presentation. Now let's bring everything together in a real-life example. Imagine a friend asks you about a book you've just finished reading. A simple answer might be, "I read a book. It was interesting." That's perfectly understandable. But now let's make it sound more natural and memorable. I recently finished reading a fascinating novel that explored themes of love, loss, and personal growth. The story stayed with me long after I finished it, and it made me think about my own experiences in a completely different way. Can you feel the difference? You're no longer giving information, you're sharing an experience, and that's exactly what makes people enjoy listening to you. Here's a simple challenge for today. Think about your favorite book, movie, or TV series. Start with one short sentence, then slowly add details, feelings, and reasons. Little by little, you'll notice your English becoming richer without feeling forced. Before we move on, let's quickly remember something important. Reaching an advanced level isn't only about learning more grammar, and it isn't only about memorizing more vocabulary. It's about learning how to think more deeply, describe your ideas more clearly, and create a real connection with the person listening to you. Every synonym you learn, every metaphor you practice, every story you tell, and every new expression you use brings you one step closer to speaking English naturally and confidently. Now let's discover another skill that advanced speakers use almost without realizing it. Sometimes they don't emphasize a sentence by choosing a stronger word. Instead, they change the structure of the sentence itself. And that small change can make an ordinary sentence sound much more powerful. At an advanced level, there's another technique that makes your English sound more polished. Sometimes, instead of changing the words, you simply change the order of the sentence. That small change can make one idea stand out much more clearly. Let me show you. A simple sentence might be, "I really like this idea." Now, listen to a more natural and expressive version. "What I really like about this idea is its simplicity." Or you could say, "This idea, I have to say, appeals to me more than any other." Here's one more. "It's the creativity behind this idea that makes it truly stand out." Can you hear the difference? The message is still the same, but now your listener immediately knows which part you want to emphasize. That's one of the habits that makes advanced English sound more confident and more engaging. Let's practice together. Repeat after me. "What inspires me the most is the effort you put into your work." Excellent. Now try this one. "It was the kindness in her voice that made me feel comfortable." Very good. And one more. What makes this place unforgettable is the warmth of its people. Fantastic. As you practice these patterns, you'll notice that your English begins to sound much more natural. Instead of saying every sentence in exactly the same way, you'll have different ways to express the same idea. And that's an important part of becoming a flexible speaker. Now, let's move on to another skill that you'll hear everywhere in English conversations: reported speech. Think about how often we tell other people what someone said. We do it almost every day. Instead of repeating every word exactly, we naturally explain it in our own words. That's what reported speech helps you do. For example, someone says, "I'm tired." Later, you might tell a friend, "She said that she was tired." Simple, clear, and natural. Let's look at another example. Instead of saying, "She said, I'm exhausted after the trip," you could naturally say, "She mentioned that she was exhausted after the long journey." Here's another one. He explained that he had been working on the project for several months. Can you hear how smooth that sounds? Now let's practice together. I'll give you the direct sentence first, then we'll change it into reported speech. Ready? Direct. He said, "I like this plan." Now repeat. He said that he liked the plan. Excellent. Here's another one. Direct. She said, "I'll help you tomorrow." Now change it. She promised that she would help me the following day. Very good. One more. Direct. They said, "We're leaving now." Now repeat. They told me they were leaving at that moment. Fantastic. Take your time with these examples. At first, they may feel a little unfamiliar, but the more often you hear them and the more often you practice them, the more naturally they'll come to you during real conversations. Now, let's bring everything we've learned together. So far, you've learned how to choose better vocabulary, tell more engaging stories, express your feelings more clearly, and organize your ideas naturally. The next step is learning how to support your opinions, because advanced speakers don't simply tell people what they think, they explain why they think it. They give reasons, they build convincing ideas, and that's exactly what we're going to practice next, together. Let's build one more skill that makes advanced speakers sound confident. It's not just about having an opinion. It's about explaining your opinion in a clear and convincing way. Think about real conversations. People rarely stop after saying, "I like it," or "I don't agree." Instead, they explain why. That's what we're going to practice now. For example, instead of simply saying, "I think learning English is important," you could naturally say, "I strongly believe learning English is one of the most valuable skills you can develop because it opens the door to new opportunities, meaningful connections, and lifelong learning." Here's another example. In my view, speaking English isn't only about communication. It's about connecting with people, understanding different cultures, and feeling confident wherever you go. Can you hear the difference? You're no longer giving a short opinion. You're supporting your idea with reasons. And that's what makes your English sound thoughtful and persuasive. Let's practice together. Repeat after me. In my opinion, practicing English every day is much more effective than studying only once in a while. Excellent. Here's another one. I believe technology has made language learning more accessible than ever before. Very good. And one more. There is no doubt that consistent practice is the key to becoming a confident English speaker. Fantastic! As you continue practicing, try using these patterns whenever you write in a journal, join a discussion, or simply share your thoughts with someone. The more often you organize your ideas this way, the more naturally they'll come to you in conversation. Now, let's move on to another important skill for this section: expressing two different ideas in the same sentence. Real conversations aren't always black and white. Sometimes we like something, but we also see a problem. That's why advanced speakers often use contrast. For example, instead of saying, I like it, but it's expensive, you could naturally say, although I like it, I think the price is a little too high. Or, I really like it, nevertheless, I can't afford it at the moment. Here's another natural example. While I enjoy using it, I have to admit it's more expensive than I expected. Can you hear how balanced those sentences sound? You're not simply giving one opinion, you're showing both sides of your thinking. And that's exactly how confident speakers communicate in everyday life. Now, let's practice a few contrast sentences together. Repeat after me. Let's practice those contrast sentences together. Repeat after me. Although the film was quite long, it kept my attention from beginning to end. Excellent! Here's another one. While she is still young, she has already achieved incredible success. Very good. And one more. The weather was cold. Nevertheless, we decided to go hiking. Fantastic. Can you see what's happening? You're learning to express two ideas in the same sentence without losing the flow. That's exactly how confident English speakers communicate. Now, let's come back to something we've been building throughout this entire lesson: fluency. Remember, fluency isn't about speaking as fast as possible. It's about speaking smoothly and naturally. Many learners pause after every few words because they're translating in their heads. But little by little, you want your English to come out in natural groups of words. Listen carefully. I went to the park yesterday afternoon and had a wonderful time walking among the trees. Notice how the sentence flows instead of stopping every few words? That's what we're aiming for. One of the best ways to build that rhythm is through shadowing. Listen carefully to a native speaker, then repeat the sentence exactly the way you hear it. Copy the pronunciation, copy the rhythm, copy the natural pauses. The more often you do this, the more your mouth begins to produce English naturally without thinking about every single word. Now, let's move on to another habit that separates advanced speakers from intermediate learners: choosing the exact word for the situation. Many learners use the same words again and again: good, bad, nice, big, small. Those words are completely correct, but advanced speakers know they have more choices. For example, instead of saying the service was bad, you could naturally say the service was disappointing, or the service was dreadful, or even the service was unacceptable for a restaurant of that quality. Can you hear the difference? Each sentence expresses a slightly different feeling, and choosing the right word helps your listener understand exactly what you mean. Let's practice together. Repeat after me. The service was dreadful, and it completely ruined the experience. Excellent. Now try this one. The service was unacceptable for a restaurant of that standard. Very good. And one more. The service was disappointing, especially after hearing so many positive reviews. Fantastic. Here's something I'd like you to remember. Don't try to replace every simple word overnight. Instead, each week, learn just 2 or 3 better alternatives. Use them in real conversations. Use them when you write. Use them when you practice speaking. That's how advanced vocabulary becomes natural. Now, let's make your English even more expressive. We're going to build stronger sentences using advanced adjectives and adverbs. Instead of saying, she runs fast, you could naturally say, she runs incredibly fast with impressive strength and stamina. Or, she runs astonishingly quickly, leaving everyone else far behind. Can you imagine that scene? Those small additions make your English much more vivid. Let's look at another example. Instead of saying, the room was big, you could say, the room was spacious and beautifully designed. Or the room was impressively large with high ceilings that made it feel bright and open. Notice something? You aren't making the sentence more complicated, you're simply helping your listener picture it more clearly. That's one of the biggest differences between speaking English and painting a picture with English. Now, let's practice together. Repeat after me. The speech was remarkably inspiring. Excellent. Here's another one. He worked tirelessly to finish the project. Very good. And one more. The city looked breathtakingly beautiful at night. Fantastic. The more you build sentences like these, the more confident and expressive your English will become. Did you notice something? Every time you added one stronger adjective or one more descriptive adverb, your sentence became much more vivid. Your listener could imagine it more clearly. That's exactly what advanced speakers do. So here's a simple habit I'd like you to build. Whenever you describe something in English, ask yourself, can I add one stronger adjective or one more descriptive detail? That one small habit can completely change the way your English sounds over time. Now, let's move on to another grammar skill that advanced speakers use naturally, the passive voice. Don't worry, it sounds much more difficult than it really is. Think about these two sentences. The company hired him. Now listen to the passive version. He was hired by the company. Both sentences are correct. The only difference is where the attention goes. In the first sentence, the focus is on the company. In the second, the focus is on the person who was hired. That's why native speakers naturally switch between active and passive voice depending on what they want to emphasize. Let's look at another example. The meeting was postponed because of bad weather. Or, the novel was translated into more than 20 languages. Notice how the action becomes the most important part of the sentence. That's why you'll hear passive voice very often in news reports, business conversations, academic writing, and everyday English. Now let's practice together. Repeat after me. The decision was made after careful consideration. Excellent. Here's another one. The problem was solved through teamwork and patience. Very good. And one more. The bridge was built more than 100 years ago. Fantastic. Here's a great exercise you can try later. Take one active sentence, then change it into a passive sentence. After that, change it back again. Doing this will help you become comfortable using both naturally. Now, let's build another skill that makes your English sound smoother. Connecting ideas in a single sentence. Instead of speaking in lots of short sentences, advanced speakers naturally combine related ideas. For example, you could say, I have a friend. She lives in London. Those sentences are perfectly correct. Now listen to the smoother version. I have a friend who lives in London. Or, I have a friend who has been living in London for several years and works as a teacher. Can you hear how much more natural that sounds? Instead of stopping after every sentence, your ideas begin to flow together. Let's look at another example. This is the book that inspired me to study literature. Or, the man whose car was stolen reported it to the police immediately. These sentence patterns help you add more information without making your English sound repetitive, and that's exactly what confident speakers do in everyday conversations. Now, let's practice these together. Repeat after me. Let's practice these together. Repeat after me. I admire people who are always willing to help others. Excellent. Here's another one. This is the place where we first met. Very good. And one more. She spoke to the teacher who encouraged her to keep studying. Fantastic. Can you hear how naturally those ideas connect? Instead of stopping after every sentence, you're combining your thoughts into one smooth idea. That's one of the habits that makes advanced English feel effortless. Now let's build another powerful skill. using more advanced connectors. You already know words like because, so, and but. Those are important. You'll use them for the rest of your life. But as your English grows, you'll naturally add more variety. For example, owing to, in spite of, with regard to, provided that. These expressions help your English sound more organized and more confident. Let's see them in real sentences. Owing to the heavy rain, the event had to be rescheduled. Or, with regard to your question, I think we should look at the information first. Notice how naturally those ideas flow together? Now let's practice. Repeat after me. In spite of the difficulties, they managed to succeed. Excellent. Here's another one. Provided that everyone contributes, the project will be successful. Very good. One more. Notwithstanding his lack of experience, he handled the situation extremely well. Fantastic. Don't worry if these expressions feel new. You don't need to memorize all of them today. Simply listen, repeat, and gradually begin using one or two in your own speaking. That's how advanced English becomes natural. Now let's bring everything together with a real-life speaking exercise. Imagine someone asks, "What did you do over the weekend?" A simple answer might be, "I went shopping, I bought some clothes, I met a friend." That's a perfectly good answer. Now listen to how you can make the same story feel more natural. Over the weekend, I went shopping and treated myself to a few new clothes. Later, I met a friend and we spent the afternoon talking over coffee about our future plans. Can you feel the difference? You're no longer listing events, you're telling a story. And that's what keeps people interested when they listen to you. Here's something I'd like you to try after this lesson. Think about your own weekend. Start with one simple sentence. Then slowly add more details, connect your ideas, and explain how you felt. You don't need difficult vocabulary. You simply need to make your listener feel as if they are experiencing the moment with you. Little by little, this becomes natural, and that's exactly how confident speakers develop. Now let's move into another skill that advanced speakers use every day without even thinking about it: expressing opinions with much greater precision. Instead of simply saying, "I think it's good," or "I don't like it," you're about to learn how to explain your thoughts with much more clarity, confidence, and impact. Many English learners know what they want to say, but they don't always know how to express it in a confident way. That's where advanced opinion phrases become so useful. Instead of simply saying, "I think this is good," you can explain your idea with much more confidence. For example, "In my view, this is a highly effective solution to the problem." Or, "I would argue that this approach isn't the most practical." Here's another natural example. "From my perspective, this idea has real potential, although it could be developed even further." Can you hear the difference? These expressions don't just share an opinion, they show careful thinking, and that's exactly what advanced speakers do. Let's practice together. Repeat after me. As far as I'm concerned, consistent practice is the most important part of learning a language. Excellent. Here's another one. I'm convinced that building a strong vocabulary is one of the keys to advanced fluency. Very good. And one more. I would argue that confidence is just as important as grammar when it comes to communication. Fantastic. As you continue practicing English, try replacing simple phrases like "I think" with these more natural alternatives. Little by little, they'll become part of the way you speak. Now let's look at another technique that makes conversation sound much smoother: showing contrast. Most learners rely on one simple word, but. There's nothing wrong with using it. Native speakers use it too, but they also use many other expressions to make their English more varied. For example, nevertheless. On the other hand, at the same time, even so. Let's hear them in real sentences. I was tired, nevertheless, I finished the project. Or, I enjoy living in the city. On the other hand, I sometimes miss the quietness of the countryside. Here's another one. The task was challenging. Even so, we managed to complete it successfully. Notice how these expressions make your ideas flow more naturally? Instead of repeating the same connector over and over, your English begins to sound much more flexible. Let's practice together. Repeat after me. She was nervous before the presentation. Nevertheless, she spoke with great confidence. Excellent. Now try this one. He's usually quiet. On the other hand, he's very funny once you get to know him. Very good. And one more. The weather was terrible. Even so, we decided to continue with the trip. Fantastic. The more variety you add to your speaking, the more natural your conversations will sound. Now let's build another skill that advanced speakers use almost without thinking, adding more detail inside a noun phrase. Instead of saying, it's a problem, you can naturally say, it's a serious environmental problem affecting millions of people. Can you hear how much more specific that sounds? You're giving your listener a much clearer picture. That's one of the habits that makes advanced English feel precise and professional. Let's look at a few more examples together and see how easily you can build richer, more descriptive sentences. Instead of simply saying, he's a teacher, listen to this version. He's an experienced language teacher with more than 10 years of classroom experience. Can you hear the difference? The sentence isn't much longer, but now your listener has a much clearer picture. That's exactly what advanced speakers do. They don't always use more difficult English. They simply give more meaningful details. Let's practice together. Repeat after me. She is a highly respected professor of linguistics at a leading university. Excellent. Here's another one. It was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to study abroad. Very good. And one more. He has an impressive collection of rare and valuable books. Fantastic. Now I'd like you to try this with your own life. Think about your job, your hobbies, or something you're passionate about. Instead of describing it in 1 or 2 words, add 1 or 2 meaningful details. You'll be surprised how much richer your English begins to sound. Now let's move on to another grammar skill that advanced speakers use naturally, modal verbs. You probably already know words like can, must, and should. Now let's see how these same words can express much more. For example, I could have studied harder. This tells us you had the opportunity, but you didn't do it. Here's another one. You should have told me earlier. Now you're talking about something you wish had happened differently. And one more. They might have taken the wrong train. This expresses possibility. Notice how these small changes allow you to talk about regret, advice, or uncertainty much more naturally. Let's practice together. Repeat after me. I could have joined the trip, but I decided to stay home. Excellent. Now try this one. She should have apologized for her mistake. Very good. And one more. They might have taken the wrong train. Fantastic. As you continue practicing, try using these patterns when you think about your own experiences. Instead of simply talking about what happened, begin talking about what could have happened, what should have happened, or what might have happened. That's another important step toward advanced fluency. Now let's build one more useful skill, talking about certainty and probability. In everyday conversations, we often talk about things we're not completely sure about. Many learners simply say, maybe he's right. That's a perfectly natural sentence. Now let's make it sound a little more precise. It's highly likely that he's right, or there's a strong possibility that he has already left. Here's another example. It's almost certain that the results will be announced tomorrow. Can you hear how much more confident those expressions sound? They help you explain exactly how certain or uncertain you are. Let's practice together. Repeat after me. It's quite possible that she'll join us later. Excellent. Here's another one. There's a high probability of rain this weekend. Very good. And one more. It's almost certain that technology will continue to transform education. Fantastic! These expressions are useful everywhere. You'll hear them in everyday conversations, business meetings, news reports, and academic discussions. The more often you use them, the more natural they'll become. Now let's bring everything we've practiced together in a real-life conversation. Imagine someone turns to you and asks, "What do you think about learning languages?" Instead of giving a short answer, let's build a response that sounds thoughtful, natural, and confidently advanced. Imagine someone asks you, "What do you think about learning languages?" A simple answer might be, "It's good." That's completely understandable. Now let's build a richer answer together. In my opinion, learning a new language is one of the most rewarding experiences a person can have because it opens the door to meaningful communication, new cultures, and personal growth. Can you hear the difference? The second answer doesn't just express an opinion, it explains it, it gives reasons, and it leaves a much stronger impression. That's exactly what advanced speakers do. Whenever someone asks for your opinion, challenge yourself to go one step further. Don't stop after the first sentence. Add a reason, share a personal experience, or explain why you feel that way. Those small additions make your English sound much more confident and natural. Now let's explore another skill that helps you sound more precise: making comparisons. Many learners say things like, "She's taller than me," or "This book is better." Those sentences are perfectly correct. Now let's make them more expressive. "She's significantly taller than I am, which makes her easy to spot in a crowd." Or, "This book is far more insightful than the previous one I read." Notice what changed? You didn't just compare two things, you explained the difference more clearly. Let's look at another example. "The exam wasn't nearly as difficult as I expected." Or, "The movie was nothing like the trailer suggested. It was much more thoughtful and emotional." These small changes make your comparisons sound much more natural. Let's practice together. Repeat after me. "This course is much more challenging than the one I took last year." Excellent. Here's another one. "The view from the mountain was just as breathtaking as the photographs promised." Very good. And one more. "The new policy isn't nearly as effective as the previous one." Fantastic! The more variety you use in your comparisons, the more flexible your English becomes. Now let's learn a sentence pattern that you'll often hear in speeches, presentations, and advanced writing: inversion. It may sound like a difficult grammar topic, but the idea is actually very simple. Sometimes, instead of changing the words, you change the order of the sentence to create stronger emphasis. For example, instead of saying, "I had never seen such beauty before," you could say, "Never had I seen such beauty before." Or instead of, "I rarely go out on weekdays," you could say, "Rarely do I go out on weekdays." Can you hear how powerful those sentences sound? You probably won't use them every day in casual conversation, but they're excellent for formal speaking and advanced writing. Let's practice together. Repeat after me. "Never have I been so inspired by a teacher." Excellent. Here's another one. "Seldom do we realize how much progress we're making until we look back." Very good. And one more. "Only after failing several times did he finally succeed." Fantastic. These patterns may feel a little unusual at first, but every time you repeat them, your brain becomes a little more comfortable with advanced English. Now let's build one final grammar skill for this section: mixed conditionals. You've already practiced simple conditionals earlier in this lesson. Now we're going to connect different time frames naturally. For example, if I had studied medicine, I would be a doctor today. Or, if I hadn't missed the train, I would already be at the office. Notice what's happening? A decision in the past changes the present. That's what makes mixed conditionals such a useful part of advanced English. Let's practice these together. Repeat after me. If I had learned English earlier, I would be much more fluent today. Excellent. Here's another one. If she had joined the company, she would be leading the team today. Very good. And one more. If I had accepted that opportunity, my life would look completely different now. Fantastic. At first, these sentence patterns may feel a little challenging, but every time you practice them, your brain becomes more comfortable moving naturally between the past, the present, and the future. That's one of the habits that separates advanced speakers from intermediate learners. Now let's build another powerful speaking skill: asking more thoughtful questions. Think about everyday conversations. Sometimes the quality of your English isn't judged by your answers, but by the questions you ask. Instead of asking, "Why is this important?" you can naturally ask, "To what extent is this relevant in today's world?" Or, "In what ways could this strategy improve our results?" Here's another example. How might this decision affect our long-term goals? Can you hear the difference? These questions invite deeper conversations. They make you sound curious, professional, and confident. Let's practice together. Repeat after me. To what extent can daily practice improve fluency? Excellent. Now try this one. In what ways does vocabulary influence speaking confidence? Very good. And one more. How might advanced grammar change the way people perceive your English? Fantastic. As you continue practicing, don't only challenge yourself to give better answers, challenge yourself to ask better questions too. That's one of the fastest ways to become a more confident communicator. Now let's learn another group of expressions that native speakers use every day: time expressions. Many learners simply say, "I'll finish it soon." That's perfectly natural, but English offers many more ways to express time. For example, in the long run, from now on, sooner or later, in the meantime, at the last minute. These expressions make your English sound much smoother and more natural. Let's practice together. Repeat after me. In the long run, consistent practice always pays off. Excellent. Here's another one. Sooner or later, you'll begin to notice the results of your hard work. Very good. Now try this one. In the meantime, keep practicing every day and enjoy the learning process. Excellent. And one more. At the last minute, he decided to change his presentation. Fantastic. Can you hear how naturally these expressions fit into everyday conversations? The more often you use them, the less you'll have to think about them. They'll simply become part of the way you speak. Now let's bring everything together one more time with a real-life situation. Imagine someone asks you about your future goals. A simple answer might be, "I want to become fluent in English." That's a good answer. Now let's build something richer. My long-term goal is to become fluent in English so I can communicate confidently with people from around the world and feel comfortable in both personal and professional conversations. Or you could say, in the long run, I want to build the vocabulary, confidence, and communication skills that will allow me to express my ideas clearly and naturally in any situation. Notice what changed? You didn't just share a goal, you explained your purpose. You painted a picture of the future you're working toward. And that's exactly what advanced communication is all about. As you practice expanding your goals like this, something interesting begins to happen. You're no longer just practicing English, you're practicing the future you want to create, and that makes every sentence feel more meaningful. Now let's explore another skill that advanced speakers use naturally every day: talking about uncertainty. In real conversations, we don't always know exactly what happened. Sometimes we guess, sometimes we make predictions, sometimes we simply aren't sure. Many learners say, "Maybe he's late." That's a perfectly natural sentence. Now let's make it sound a little more advanced. He might have been delayed by traffic, or it's possible that he lost track of time. Here's another natural example. He could well be running behind schedule. Can you hear the difference? Instead of making a simple guess, you're expressing uncertainty much more naturally. Let's practice together. Repeat after me. She may have forgotten to check her messages. Excellent. Here's another one. It's quite possible that the event will be postponed. Very good. And one more. They could well be considering other options at this point. Fantastic. The more ways you have to express uncertainty, the more flexible your English becomes. And flexibility is one of the clearest signs of advanced fluency. Now let's learn another technique that makes your English sound much more expressive: cleft sentences. Don't worry about the grammar name. The idea is much simpler than it sounds. Sometimes you want to draw attention to one specific part of your sentence. For example, instead of saying, "I enjoyed the movie," you could naturally say, "What I really enjoyed was the movie soundtrack." Or instead of saying, "She inspired me," you could say, "It was her determination that inspired me the most." Notice what happened? The message stayed the same, but now the most important idea stands out much more clearly. Let's practice together. Repeat after me. What surprised me the most was how quickly I improved after practicing every day. Excellent. Now try this one. It was his positive attitude that motivated the whole team. Very good. And one more. What I appreciate most is your willingness to keep learning. Fantastic. These sentence patterns make your English sound more expressive without making it more difficult. Now let's move on to one of the most valuable communication skills you'll ever learn: agreeing and disagreeing politely. Real conversations aren't about winning arguments. They're about sharing ideas respectfully. Many learners simply say, "I agree," or "I don't agree." Those sentences are correct, but advanced speakers often add a little more balance. For example, "I completely agree with your point because it highlights the importance of consistent practice." Or, "I agree to some extent, although I think there are a few other factors to consider." Here's another natural example. "I'm not entirely convinced, but I understand where you're coming from." Can you hear how respectful those responses sound? You still express your opinion, but you also keep the conversation open. That's exactly what confident communicators do. Let's practice together. Repeat after me. I completely agree that vocabulary plays a central role in becoming fluent. Excellent. Here's another one. I agree to a certain extent, but I believe grammar is just as important. Very good. And one more. I can certainly see your perspective, though I would interpret it a little differently. Can you hear how natural that sounds? You still share your opinion, but you also show respect for the other person's point of view. That's one of the qualities that makes advanced speakers enjoyable to talk to. Now let's move on to another skill that separates confident speakers from everyone else: speaking for longer without losing your flow. Many learners can answer a question in one or two sentences, but after that, they aren't sure what to say next. Advanced speakers solve this by organizing their ideas before they speak. Instead of speaking randomly, they guide the listener through their thoughts. For example, there are three main reasons why I believe daily practice is essential. First of all, it builds confidence. Secondly, it helps vocabulary become automatic through repetition. And finally, it develops natural rhythm and flow, making conversations much easier. Notice how easy that is to follow? Your listener always knows where you're going next. Those simple signposts, first, secondly, finally, help your English sound organized and confident. Let's practice together. Repeat after me. There are several advantages to reading books in English. Excellent. Now continue. To begin with, they introduce you to new vocabulary in a natural way. Very good. Here's another one. In addition, they help you understand grammar through real examples. Excellent. And one more. Finally, they improve both your imagination and your ability to express ideas. Fantastic. Here's a simple challenge for you. The next time you talk about your hobbies, your work, or your weekend, try organizing your answer into 2 or 3 clear points. You'll notice that speaking for longer becomes much easier. Now let's build another small habit that makes a surprisingly big difference: controlling the strength of your message. Sometimes you want to sound stronger. Sometimes you want to sound softer. Advanced speakers naturally adjust their language depending on the situation. For example, instead of saying, "I like it," you could say, "I really like it," or "I absolutely love it," or "I quite like it." Each one expresses a different level of enthusiasm. The same idea works with challenges. Instead of saying "it's difficult," you might say "it's fairly challenging," or "it's somewhat demanding," or "it's extremely demanding." Those small changes make your English much more precise. Let's practice together. Repeat after me. I absolutely loved the concert last night. Excellent. Here's another one. The exam was fairly challenging, but I managed to do well. Very good. And one more. I'm rather interested in learning more about this topic. Fantastic. As your vocabulary grows, you'll naturally become better at choosing exactly the right level of emphasis, and that's another important step toward advanced fluency. Now let's bring everything you've learned in this section together. Imagine someone asks you, "How was your weekend?" A simple answer might be, "It was good." That's completely natural. Now let's build an answer that sounds more engaging. My weekend was absolutely wonderful. I spent time with close friends and we had a fascinating conversation about our future goals. What I enjoyed most was how relaxed and refreshing the whole atmosphere felt. Notice what happened? You didn't just answer the question, you shared an experience, you explained your feelings, and you painted a clear picture for your listener. That's exactly what advanced communication sounds like. The more you practice answers like these, the more naturally advanced English will become part of the way you speak. Remember, fluency isn't about memorizing hundreds of perfect sentences. It's about learning how to express your own thoughts in a richer and more natural way. Now let's build another skill that makes advanced speakers stand out immediately: expressing emotions with precision. Most learners know words like happy, sad, angry. Those words are completely correct, but real conversations are full of different shades of emotion. Sometimes you're excited. Sometimes you're relieved. Sometimes you're quietly satisfied. And sometimes you're disappointed, but still hopeful. Learning to express those small differences makes your English feel much more human. For example, instead of saying, "I'm happy," you could naturally say, "I'm absolutely thrilled by the news," or "I'm deeply content with the progress I've made." Now let's look at another example. Instead of "I'm sad," you could say, "I was heartbroken when I heard what happened," or "I felt a little disappointed after the meeting didn't go as planned." Can you hear the difference? Each sentence creates a different emotional picture, and that's exactly what advanced communication is all about. Let's practice together. Repeat after me. I was thrilled to hear about her success. Excellent. Here's another one. He was devastated after losing his job. Very good. And one more. She was slightly disappointed, but she remained hopeful. Fantastic. As you continue learning, don't just ask yourself, what word can I use? Also ask, how strong is this feeling? Choosing the right emotion is one of the biggest differences between intermediate and advanced English. Now let's move on to another communication skill that you'll use almost every day: being polite without sounding unnatural. Think about it. In English, the words you choose can completely change the tone of a conversation. Many learners say, "Give me the book." People will understand you, but native speakers usually make their requests softer. For example, "Could you pass me the book, please?" Or, "I was wondering if you could help me with this." Here's another natural example. "Would you mind closing the window?" Can you hear how friendly those sentences sound? The meaning hasn't changed, only the tone has. And that small change makes a big difference in professional, academic, and everyday conversations. Let's practice together. Repeat after me. Would it be possible for you to explain that again? Excellent. Here's another one. I was wondering if we could discuss this tomorrow. Very good. And one more. Could you please let me know your opinion on this? Fantastic. The more often you practice polite English, the more confident you'll feel speaking with teachers, colleagues, clients, or anyone you've just met. Now we've built confidence, natural emotion, and polite communication. Let's explore another difference between intermediate and advanced English. It's not always about learning difficult words. Sometimes it's simply about choosing a more natural word for the situation. For example, instead of saying, "The test was hard," you could naturally say, "The exam proved to be particularly demanding." Or instead of, "I need to think about it," you might say, "I need a little time to reflect on it." Here's another example. Instead of saying, "He said no," you could say, "He politely declined the offer." Can you hear the difference? The meaning stays almost the same, but the language sounds more confident and professional. These are exactly the kinds of expressions you'll hear in meetings, presentations, interviews, and everyday conversations with advanced speakers. Let's practice together. Repeat after me. The results were satisfactory, but further analysis is required. Excellent. Here's another one. We should evaluate all the options before making a decision. Very good. And one more. She expressed her sincere gratitude for the support she received. Fantastic. Little by little, your brain begins replacing simple words with more natural alternatives. That's how advanced vocabulary becomes part of your everyday English. Now let's build another habit that advanced speakers use all the time: being careful with what they say. Instead of making very strong statements, they often leave room for other possibilities. For example, instead of saying, "This is true," you could naturally say, "This seems to be true," or "This is likely to be the case." Instead of saying, "Everyone agrees," you might say, "Most people would probably agree." These small changes make your English sound thoughtful, balanced, and professional. Let's practice together. Repeat after me. It appears that students improve faster with regular practice. Excellent. Now try this one. This method is likely to be effective in many different situations. Very good. And one more. There seems to be a strong connection between reading and vocabulary growth. Fantastic. Notice how these expressions make your English sound more natural. Instead of sounding too certain, you sound careful and confident. That's an important communication skill in both academic and professional environments. Now let's look at another technique that makes your English memorable: creating rhythm. Advanced speakers often repeat a similar sentence pattern to make an idea more powerful. Listen carefully. Practice builds confidence. Practice builds fluency. Practice builds success. Can you feel the rhythm? Here's another example. She was determined to learn, determined to improve, and determined to never give up. Repeating the structure helps your listener remember your message. Let's practice together. Repeat after me. We need patience. We need persistence. And we need passion to become fluent. Excellent. Here's another one. He studied every morning. He studied every afternoon. And he studied every evening. Very good. One more. To learn is to grow. To grow is to improve. And to improve is to inspire. Fantastic! These patterns are simple, but they're incredibly effective. They make your English sound clear, confident, and inspiring. Now let's bring everything together with another real-life situation. Imagine you're sitting in a job interview. The interviewer smiles and asks, "Why would you like to work with us?" A simple answer might be, "Because I need a job." There's nothing wrong with that, but now listen to a more advanced response. "I'm genuinely excited about the opportunity to work with your company because I admire your commitment to innovation and continuous learning. I believe my communication skills, willingness to learn, and ability to solve problems would allow me to make a meaningful contribution to your team." Notice what changed? You didn't just answer the question. You showed confidence. You explained your motivation, and you gave the interviewer a clear picture of the value you could bring. That's exactly what advanced communication is about. Can you see why that answer sounds so much stronger? It isn't longer just for the sake of being longer. Every sentence has a purpose. It explains your ideas, shows your confidence, and helps the other person understand who you are. That's exactly the kind of English we're building throughout this masterclass. Now let's move on to another skill that advanced speakers use almost every day: summarizing information clearly. Think about real life. Sometimes you've read an article, attended a meeting, or watched a video, and someone asks, "So, what was it about?" Advanced speakers don't repeat every single detail. They focus on the most important ideas. For example, instead of explaining an entire meeting from beginning to end, you could naturally say, "In summary, the team agreed to extend the project deadline, assign additional resources, and schedule weekly progress meetings." Notice how much information fits into one clear sentence? That's the power of summarizing. It helps you sound organized, confident, and easy to understand. Here's a simple habit you can start today. After watching an English video, reading a short article, or listening to a podcast, challenge yourself to explain the main ideas in just 2 or 3 sentences. That exercise trains both your speaking and your thinking at the same time. Now let's continue building another skill that advanced speakers use naturally: choosing more formal vocabulary when the situation requires it. Imagine you're talking with a friend. Simple English works perfectly, but in a presentation, a meeting, or a job interview, you'll often want language that sounds a little more polished. For example, instead of saying, "The test was hard," you could naturally say, "The exam proved to be particularly demanding." Instead of, "I need to think about it," you might say, "I'd like a little time to reflect on the matter." Or instead of, "He said no," you could say, "He politely declined the offer." Can you hear the difference? The meaning hasn't changed, only the style has. And being able to move naturally between casual and formal English is one of the clearest signs of advanced fluency. Let's practice together. Repeat after me. "The results were satisfactory, but further analysis is required." Excellent. Now try this one. "We should evaluate all the available options before making a final decision." Very good. And one more. "She expressed her sincere gratitude for the support she received." Fantastic. Now let's learn another habit that makes advanced English sound thoughtful and balanced: hedging language. Native speakers don't always speak with complete certainty. Sometimes they leave room for other possibilities. For example, instead of saying, "This is true," you could naturally say, "This seems to be true," or "This is likely to be the case." Instead of saying, "Everyone agrees," you might say, "Most people would probably agree." Those small changes make your English sound more careful, more professional, and more believable. Let's practice together. Repeat after me. It appears that students improve more quickly with regular practice. Excellent. Now try this one. This method is likely to be effective in a wide range of situations. Very good. And one more. There seems to be a strong connection between reading regularly and developing a richer vocabulary. Fantastic. The more you practice these patterns, the more naturally you'll express ideas with confidence, balance, and precision. There seems to be a strong connection between reading regularly and building a richer vocabulary. Excellent. Can you hear how balanced that sounds? You're expressing an idea confidently without making it sound too absolute. That's exactly how advanced speakers communicate. Now let's explore another technique that can make your English sound much more memorable: creating rhythm in your sentences. Have you ever listened to a speaker and noticed that certain sentences stay in your mind long after they're finished? One reason is rhythm. Advanced speakers often repeat a similar sentence pattern to make an idea stronger. Listen carefully. Practice builds confidence. Practice builds fluency. Practice builds success. The structure stays the same, but each sentence adds a little more meaning. Here's another example. She was determined to learn, determined to improve, and determined to never give up. Can you feel the rhythm? Those patterns make ideas easier to remember. Let's practice together. Repeat after me. We need patience, we need persistence, and we need passion to become fluent. Excellent. Here's another one. He studied every morning. He studied every afternoon. And he studied every evening. Very good. One more. To learn is to grow. To grow is to improve. And to improve is to inspire. Fantastic. As you continue practicing, listen for these patterns in podcasts, interviews, and speeches. The more you notice them, the more naturally you'll begin using them yourself. Now let's bring everything together with another real-life situation. Imagine you're sitting in a job interview. The interviewer smiles and asks, "Why would you like to work with our company?" A simple answer might be, "Because I need a job." That's honest. But now listen to a more natural and professional response. "I'm genuinely excited about the opportunity to work with your company because I admire your commitment to innovation and continuous improvement. I believe my communication skills, problem-solving ability, and willingness to learn would allow me to make a meaningful contribution to your team." Can you hear the difference? That answer doesn't just explain what you want, it explains the value you can bring. And that's exactly what employers, clients, and professional colleagues want to hear. Now let's build another skill that advanced speakers use almost every day: summarizing information clearly. Think about how often someone asks, "What happened?" or "Can you explain it quickly?" Advanced speakers don't repeat every single detail. They identify the main ideas and explain them clearly. For example, instead of describing every moment of a meeting, you could naturally say, "In summary, the team agreed to extend the project deadline, assign additional resources, and schedule weekly progress meetings." One sentence, three important ideas: clear, organized, and easy to understand. Let's practice with another example. Imagine you've just finished watching a 2-hour movie. A simple summary might be, "It was about a boy, he had special powers, he fought bad people, he won." People understand the story. But now listen to a more advanced summary. The movie followed the journey of a young boy with extraordinary abilities who overcame difficult challenges, defeated his enemies, and ultimately discovered his true identity. Notice something? You didn't include every detail. You included the most important ones, and that's what great summaries do. Here's a challenge for you. After today's lesson, try summarizing your day, your favorite movie, or even what you've learned in this masterclass, using only 3 or 4 clear sentences. That simple habit will strengthen your vocabulary, improve your speaking, and train you to organize your thoughts much more naturally. Now let's build another skill that truly separates advanced speakers from intermediate learners: saying the same idea in different ways. Think about real conversations. People rarely repeat the exact same sentence again and again. Instead, they naturally rephrase their ideas. That's called paraphrasing, and it's one of the most valuable skills you can develop. For example, someone says, "It's important to practice every day." You could naturally respond, "I completely agree. Consistent practice is essential for making real progress." Or, "Absolutely. Regular practice is what helps your skills become automatic." Here's another way to express the same idea. In my experience, nothing improves fluency more than using English every single day. Can you hear the difference? The message stays the same, but the wording changes naturally. That's exactly what confident speakers do. Let's practice together. The sentence is, "I like reading books." Now repeat after me. "I really enjoy reading novels in my free time." Excellent. Here's another version. "Reading is one of my favorite hobbies." Very good. And one more. "I find great enjoyment in exploring different stories through books." Fantastic. Here's a simple challenge. Whenever you learn a new sentence, don't stop after repeating it once. Try saying it 2 or 3 different ways. That habit alone will make your English much more flexible. Now, let's move on to another skill that makes conversations and presentations sound much smoother: transitions. Think of transitions as bridges. They connect one idea to the next without making your speech feel disconnected. Many learners use then, next, after that. Those are completely correct. Now, let's add a little more variety. For example, moving on, furthermore, in addition, having said that, in contrast. Let's hear them in real sentences. In addition to building vocabulary, regular listening practice is equally important. Or, having said that, grammar also plays an important role in clear communication. Here's another example. In contrast, studying without speaking practice often leads to frustration. Notice how naturally each idea connects to the next? That's exactly what makes advanced English easier to follow. Let's practice together. Repeat after me. Moving on, let's discuss the importance of fluency in everyday life. Excellent. Here's another one. Furthermore, speaking with native speakers can accelerate your progress. Very good. And one more. In contrast, studying without speaking practice often leads to slower improvement. Fantastic. As you continue practicing, listen carefully to how native speakers connect their ideas. You'll start hearing these expressions everywhere, and before long, they'll become part of your own English. Now let's build one more important communication skill: advanced negation. Many learners say, "I don't know," or "That's not good." Those sentences are perfectly fine, but advanced speakers often express uncertainty in a softer, more natural way. For example, "I'm not entirely sure about that," or "That doesn't necessarily mean it's wrong." Here's another example. "It's not uncommon to make mistakes when you're learning something new." Can you hear the difference? Those sentences sound thoughtful, balanced, and much more conversational. Let's practice these together. Repeat after me. Did you notice something? The more naturally you use expressions like these, the more comfortable your conversations become. People don't only remember the words you use, they remember how you make them feel. That's why advanced English isn't just about grammar or vocabulary. It's also about creating connection. Now, let's explore one final skill that makes your English feel more personal and authentic: reflection. At the intermediate level, many learners simply describe what happened. Advanced speakers go one step further. They explain what the experience meant to them. For example, instead of saying, "I learned English," you could naturally say, "Learning English has been one of the most rewarding journeys of my life. It hasn't only helped me communicate with more people, but it has also changed the way I think, learn, and see the world." Can you hear the difference? The second sentence isn't just sharing information, it's sharing your experience, and that's what makes people connect with you. Let's try another example together. Imagine someone asks you, "What has learning English given you?" A simple answer might be, "It gave me knowledge." That's a good beginning. Now let's build a deeper answer. Learning English has given me the opportunity to connect with people from different countries, understand new cultures, and become much more confident when expressing my ideas. Or you could say, "It has opened doors I never thought possible and reminded me that every small step I take today brings me closer to the person I want to become." Notice how those answers feel more personal, more meaningful? That's because advanced communication isn't only about speaking correctly, it's about expressing who you are. Here's something I'd like you to try after this lesson. Take just 1 minute today and answer this simple question: What has learning English changed in my life? Don't worry about making your answer perfect. Just speak honestly. You may be surprised by how much you can already express. And every time you do this, you're not only building better English, you're building confidence in your own voice. Now we've practiced vocabulary, grammar, pronunciation, storytelling, critical thinking, and real-life communication. Imagine that you're introducing yourself to someone for the very first time. At an intermediate level, you might simply say, "I enjoy reading and I'm learning English." That's a good start. But now let's take it one step further. You could naturally say, "One of my favorite things to do is read because every book teaches me something new. Learning English has become an important part of my life because it allows me to connect with more people, discover different ideas, and grow a little every single day." Can you hear the difference? The second introduction doesn't just share information, it tells a story, it shows personality, and that's exactly what advanced English is all about. As you continue practicing, don't ask yourself, "Do I know enough English?" Instead, ask yourself, "Can I express my ideas clearly, naturally, and confidently?" That's the goal. Before we finish today's masterclass, let's do a quick recap of what we've practiced together. Today, you've learned how to upgrade simple sentences into advanced English. You've practiced richer vocabulary, natural connectors, advanced grammar, storytelling, idioms, phrasal verbs, collocations, pronunciation, shadowing, paraphrasing, and most importantly, how to think and express yourself more naturally in English. If you've stayed with me until this point, I want you to know something. You've already done what most learners never do. You didn't just watch another English lesson. You practiced, you challenged yourself, and you kept going. That consistency is exactly what builds real fluency. Now I have a small challenge for you. In the comments below, tell me one advanced word, phrase, or expression that you learned from today's lesson. I read your comments every day, and I'd love to see what you're learning. You can also tell me which state or city in the United States you're watching from. I'd love to know where our English learning community is growing. And if this lesson helped you become even a little more confident today, don't forget to support the channel. Subscribe to Fluent Core English so you never miss our new English lessons. We upload practical lessons designed to help beginners speak English naturally, confidently, and one step at a time. If you enjoyed today's masterclass, give this video a thumbs up. It helps this lesson reach more English learners who need it. And if you know someone who is trying to improve their English, share this lesson with them. You might help someone take their first confident step toward fluency. Thank you so much for spending your time with me today. I'm truly grateful that you chose to learn with me. Keep listening, keep speaking, keep challenging yourself, and most importantly, keep believing that every single day you practice, you're becoming a more confident English speaker. I'll see you in the next lesson.